So, what's up, guys? I hope that everyone is having an amazing Wednesday. Um, I wanted to come on here and talk to you guys about a tough topic, I should say. I found myself, I have found myself in a season where more times than I would like to admit, my faith has been tested, literally stretched thin. And it's unfortunate because, y'all, I was not born with a silver spoon in my mouth, not by a long shot. I grew up, in a single parent household. I've experienced up and downs, certain struggles. Um, and even, throughout my adulthood, because of the kind of adult I decided I wanted to be, especially after having kids. Um, some of those, struggles and hardships kind of followed me, throughout my adulthood as well. And mainly because once um, I did have my children, I just never wanted to be the type of parent to um, sacrifice my kids in order to become the person I know God has always called me to be, but I didn't want to sacrifice my kids in order to become or chase after achievements or success. I just always felt like I know God is calling me to it. So I know He knows the desires of my heart, and He knows that whatever it is that I do in life, I don't want to have to do it at the expense of my children. So I said all of that to say, unfortunately, because of this choice that I made early on from when I had my first son at 18, I kind of grown accustomed to just kind of having certain struggles and certain hardships. As I stated, I actually was, born to a teen mom. Again, grew up in a single parent household. Um, and despite these things, I've always just refused to settle for what life has always tried to tell me I deserve, right? Because I know now. Now, I didn't know at first. I know now what it is that God says about me and the promises that He's made me, right? But what I want to talk about today is this season that I found myself in. It has truly, truly, I mean, stretched me. I cannot stress it enough. It has stretched me thin. Um, Unfortunately for myself, um, I can't say that I've always had like a support system, like a strong support system, which also plays, a major role in why things have, kind of played out the way that they have over the years, even in my adulthood. Um, After having my children, because it's like I still cannot say, that even after having my children, that I've had a strong support system. And because of that, um, in addition to the decision I had made early on that I just really don't want to have to sacrifice my kids in order to, gain success or the achievements that I know are due to me. Um, it has made things hard. And I want to talk to the people that I'm not talking to the people that you have it all together. Everything is, perfect. That is a blessing, and I am absolutely happy for you. I want to talk to the people that you may be going through something right now, and you can attest to, your faith being beyond tested. Maybe you've even arrived to a point where you're like questioning like where God is in your situation. I understand when I say I thought that I had come so far in my walk with Christ, and in building my relationship with God, that I can never be back in this place where, if I can be completely transparent, I'm just like, I don't even know anymore. Like, I'm questioning whether like this is God or not, right? Like, it's, trying to understand, like, I know what you promised me. Because when I say I've spent a lot of time, like, since I um, began this intentional journey to build a relationship with God, I have spent time with Him. Like, no doubt, I have literally been in my word. I have literally made time for God, like to a point where I don't do anything without first spending that time with Him, right? That's literally where it had, how far I had come in my relationship with God, and building that relationship with God. But when I say, guys, like, this season, this has been a season like no other. Um, I've never in my life have experienced a season um, in this way, to this extent. Um, Again, and like I said before, definitely wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth, but I can guarantee you I have never been in this place. Not since um, being a teenager, right? Again, we had our struggles when I was growing up, living in a single parent household. We definitely had our struggles, but the moment I was able to work, you guys, that's what I did. And I had never stopped from there. Like, I literally, that was my life. Like, I began working at the age of 14. And my first job was McDonald's. And when I tell you guys, I never stopped from there, because it was like, I just refused to settle for what life was trying to offer me. And even back then, I have to admit that I did not have a relationship with God. I didn't grow up in a household where, we attended church regularly, or where my mother's, talked to us about God. Like, we were the family that, we went to church on occasion, maybe Mother's Day or Easter or something like that, but we were not regularly in church. So when I say that it took me a while to find God, it took me a while. And I'm going to say, I know, you know, biblically, it may, say that it should be the other way around. Um, but what I do know for sure is that God has been after me my entire life. I have proof of that. Like, looking back over my life, I know for a fact there are moments where I can pinpoint like he has been after me my entire life. But the unfortunate part about that is so has the enemy. Um, and what I notice is that before I knew God, before I had a relationship with God, I was just out here living. Um, people would, try to talk to me about God, but because of life's circumstances, because of, relationships with people, it was just not something that, I was able to grasp like at the time. Because again, like in order for somebody to truly understand how this world works, and in order for people to understand how people work, um, you have to have a relationship with God. You have to. And again, that became apparent to me once I had a relationship with God, once I built that relationship with God, because now my mind is renewed. So I look at things differently. So here I am. Now I understand that we live in a broken world, right? So you can't control, unfortunately, how people, may treat you. You can't always, control, you know, the way life happens to you. And if you don't understand that, you can make the mistake of blaming God for these things, right? And that is just what I want to talk to everyone about, because the one thing that I know for sure is we love to brag about how strong our faith is, right? Like we love to brag about those moments where it is evident that, God is with us and he's blessing us, and, we have his favor, and, he's good, right? But what about the moments where your faith is being tested? What about the moments in life that are happening and you're just like, I don't know where God is. I can't even, I feel like I don't even hear him. That is the place I found myself after thinking I would never, ever end up being in that place again recently. After this, I mean, extended period of being in the wilderness, just in a storm that just, even now, just not even really sure of what the outcome is going to be. The only thing that I can hold on to is my trust in God. But that's just it. There are going to be times, and there are going to come seasons in life where nothing makes sense. And I want to talk to the people who you have found yourself in that position where you're just like, I don't know what to believe anymore. You know what I mean? Like things continue to get harder, but yet my prayers continue to go unanswered, right? And you're desperately listening for God. You're desperately, seeking him, but it's like he's gone completely silent, right? So I want to talk to those people because in my experience, I have learned, of course, that being in that space is so uncomfortable, and no one wants to admit that to other people, let alone themselves, right? Um, that you're in that space where you just, here you are, you've been known to be someone who heavily, you know, depends on God, and leans on God, to someone who you're just like, I feel lost. I feel like I don't know which way to go. I want you to know that you're not alone, and it is not as uncommon to feel that way as you would like to believe. It's not. Um, the thing is, you're human. Um, And sometimes, man, life can hand us our butts, right? Knock us completely off our square to the point where you don't know right from left. And it is okay to find yourself questioning and wanting answers. May even find yourself upset with God. I have been there. Um, but one thing I can say is that it may be hard to continue to trust God when you're going through and nothing makes sense. But what's even harder is trying to go through and get through whatever it is that you're dealing with right now without God. That is even harder because that is when the enemy can really, really use whatever it is he's using to really break you because you're not rooted in the word. You're not spending that time with God, to possibly gain the clarity that you're looking for, right? And we've all been there. Even Jesus has been there, right? Where, when he was, literally about to be crucified, he found himself in the field, like, praying to God and asking him, like, if you're willing, you know take this cup from me, but not my will, your will, right? So even Jesus, even though of course, he still kind of conceded to it being God's will and not his own, he still had that moment, right? So, what I want people to understand is it's not uncommon, and the shame that you may have felt, because I definitely felt it. This is me speaking from experience, not from judgment, but the shame, the embarrassment that you may have felt, being when you once you found yourself in that space, um, it will pass, right? And it doesn't have to turn into anything but a temporary, feeling or emotion, because again, no one wants to end up being in this space. We live in a world where everyone wants to, you know, only broadcast when things are going well. No one wants to sit back and talk about when life is kicking their butt. No one wants to, talk about when they are, living in lack. No one wants to do that. It's uncomfortable. But at the same time, it's reality. Not everybody is out here having it. Not everybody is out here making it. I believe that there are probably more people out here living, in lack and going through, certain struggles than there are people, who aren't, right? So I feel like I'm speaking to the majority, right? Of once we find ourselves in this position, like how do we continue to trust God when it is absolutely hard or feels impossible to do so, right? Because even when we don't see anything happening, like we're praying relentlessly, but we don't see anything happening. It's almost like, God, have you forsaken me, right? Even when we find ourselves in those moments, you know, according to scripture, we're supposed to continue to rejoice regardless. We're supposed to keep our eyes fixed on the Lord, but that's not always easy, right? It's not. I know for a fact for myself, it is not. This season, I'm telling y'all, like, although in this season, y'all, I have to admit, man, I've experienced some miracles, some blessings that have blown my mind, and not even just my mind, the minds of those around me as well. But baby, when I say this season has not, this season I've been in has not held back. Um, I mean, just to kind of like just even share with you guys, like, um, this season, it really started last year, where it was just one thing after another, right? God had blessed me tremendously with a new home, a new car. After kind of, going through something where I was kind of like in a on again and off again relationship for like 5 years, and had to walk away from that, which, was really hard. But once I made that decision to walk away from what was clear that God did not have for me, He began to bless me like in a way that you just can't even fathom, right? Again, like I said, brand new home, brand new car, um, you know, being able to work from home, be with my children. And I've been a small business owner as well, but some things had happened with my, within my family. I'm gonna say with my youngest son, where I ended up having to really kind of like pivot and wasn't able to really kind of like pour into or invest time in my business the way that I would have needed to in order to continue to um, you know strive towards success. So I, had to make the unfortunate decision to go ahead and kind of just like shut that down and, focus on um, maintaining like stability that would allow me to kind of like be there for my son in a way that I needed to be there for him. But yeah, again, I share with y'all how I feel about, when it comes to my kids, and I feel like I was blessed enough to, be able to be home with them. But of course, you know the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And when I say, it's like the more God blessed me, it was like the harder the enemy worked to take it away from me. um and it's really unfortunate because, like, you guys, I can honestly say that this 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 season started last year, right? But I don't care what it looked like. I refused to stop talking to God about what I was feeling. I always made sure I went to God and spent time with God, even if it was me having to admit that, I just don't know what's happening. Like, I'm unsure, what this is, even begging for answers, or even letting him know if I just don't agree with him. Like, I made sure that I still kept him in the midst of everything. I didn't allow the enemy to throw me off track when it came to, the way in which I allow God to still have control over my life. Like, I just didn't allow it. Um, but like I said, the enemy just kept coming. It was almost like attack after attack. And I know in situations like this is definitely considered to be like spiritual warfare, but it's like, man, I fought relentlessly, y'all. When I say I know how to pray, that's how I go to war. Like, that's how I fight back, against the enemy and his schemes, and the tricks that he tries to use. Like, I fight back in prayer and using scripture, because he'll continuously try to, feed us lies, right? And try to get us to believe that we're not who God says we are, and that, the blessings that God has blessed us with, we don't deserve. And it's like, you have to fight back and say, no, that's a lie, right? Like, no word from the Lord will ever fail. Like, I know what God promised me, and I'm standing on that. But even in that, guys, like, I can honestly say now, like, a person, just from my experience, it's like, okay, when does it end though, right? Like, you think you can get through maybe, 3 months of going through something, maybe 6 months of going through something, but with it being over a year of things just happening, right? It's just like, when is it gonna stop, right? And that's where I found myself. But just to kind of go back, I began to just have problems that just didn't make sense, right? I began to, have issues, at work with, my direct leader where, I tried to resolve the issue and was unable to. And it's just like, no, I wasn't like fired or anything like that, but I'm just like, with the way things had went, where I feel like, I had to resign in order to protect my peace, in order to protect my overall well-being. I had to resign, but would that have been something that I would have, just chose to do? Absolutely not, because there was a plan in place, right? That wasn't supposed to happen until it was supposed to happen. So that was kind of like the beginning, of the hardship and the struggles that, I have experienced in this season. But then it just didn't stop there. It was like I found myself in situations where I knew for a fact it had to be the enemy. Like, there was no way that this was normal, right? Just there being conflict where there shouldn't be conflict, just issues where there just should not be issues. And the crazy thing about it is, what I noticed is the one thing that stayed constant was my family and I. We stayed in this thing together, like we stayed in it. But the moment the enemy noticed that, he began to even attack my family, like literally. And it's just like, as I've shared with you guys, that's a sensitive place for me, and it's almost like, okay, God, I'm one thing, but when it comes to my kids, that's a whole nother ball game, right? And that's when, I began to notice, like, okay, I'm still standing firm, but now I have more questions. Now I'm just kind of looking more so like, okay, God, where are you, right? So, that things like that began to happen. So, of course, in the midst of all of that, my finances, they became, negatively impacted. Um, just like I said, having issues, I have an adult son, just having issues that, I would have never had with my adult son, just things that began to happen that I knew for a fact, like, this is of the enemy. Like, this is literally spiritual warfare. Like, God has blessed me beyond measure, right? And because of that, the enemy didn't like he didn't like it. He wants me to believe that I don't deserve the things that God gave me, right? So he began to try and even, attack my relationships and my family. Um, so then it's just like, okay, like, I didn't experience like eviction or anything like that, because when I say, y'all, God provided. Even after me having to resign from my job, God never stopped providing. When I say miraculous ways, y'all. And my, like, literally, what I paid for where I lived was not cheap. Okay, I'm talking about $2,500 or more a month, right? Depending on the situation. If you're paying on time, if you're paying late, like, I literally found myself paying many times close to $3,000 a month. And it's like, where the heck is this money coming from? When one, I no longer have my primary, income, my main source of income. And then two, like, I have a very limited amount of income coming in, elsewhere. So it's like, there's no way, anybody in their right mind would have looked at my situation like, how is she making it, right? And I feel like that's, kind of where the enemy probably ended up being, right? Like, how is she still making it through all of this, right? But I knew for a fact it was God. It could not have been any other way. There was no other explanation that it was God, because he carried me and my family each month. I don't care what was happening. The one thing he did not allow to happen was for us to end up not having a roof over our heads. And that I am so thankful for. But again, just being honest and completely transparent, it still didn't take away from the other struggles that I had, because I ended up having to make tough decisions, financially. Like, once things began to go the way that they went, like my son also, let me say that. One second. Let me go back and clear that up. My son, my son was actually, he was employed as well. Um, but that is what I mean when I say like the enemy began to attack my family as well, because then we began to have issues there as well. So now it's almost like, okay, we're almost stripped down to nothing at this point. So I had to make tough decisions, like, okay, nothing is going right, right? I'm like, here it is. I, thought that things were going to be a certain way, but now they're, they're looking grim at this point. So I'm just like, okay, what now, God? Because none of this aligns with what you promised me. So what is the next move, right? So in this case, it was like I had to start making tough decisions. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to renew my lease, even though I don't want to leave my home, brand new home, newly built. No one ever lived there. Like, I'm like, I don't want to leave my home, but unfortunately, the way things are looking, I'm going to have to, decide not to renew. And then also, I ended up having to make the decision to give my car back. Like, these things were happening back to back, and still I chose to stand firm in my trust in God, and choosing to believe what He said, um, and what He promised me versus what was actually happening, right? So basically, like I said, I chose to, lean not on my own understanding. I just literally chose to just trust God regardless of what. And when I say, y'all, just like the enemy uses people, God uses people to bless you. When I say, you guys, I have been blessed in ways where I'm just like, there was no way this was anyone else but God. I mean, Him putting me on the hearts of people that, where I'm not even in the room, and they're, advocating for me in a way, where I lived, and it just was mind blowing, where I'm just like, I know for a fact the Lord is fighting for me, right? Regardless of what is happening around me, I know He's fighting for me. Um, and eventually, this ended up turning into, you know what? I have always, guys, I'm going to say, since I've always been open to actually like living abroad and living outside of the country. But I'm going to say I began to seriously research it back in, like 2020, like right before the pandemic. And I began to just kind of like research different places, that would be, you know, um, a good place for me and my family to go. But once this began to happen, I, kind of just really, really became intentional about, okay, this may just be something that, this is time, right? Because I've never been in a season like this before. I've always worked since I was 14 years old. I've always been able to figure it out, been able to provide for my family. Even, if it, wasn't very much, I've always been able to figure things out, right? Um, but it got to a point in this season where it's just like nothing is adding up, nothing is making sense. Like, we all know, that it's much deeper than just with me, you know, as Black women, we're kind of already under attack, in this current economy where it's already hard to find work, right? We're already, being negatively impacted in the workforce, whether it's, us losing jobs by the thousands or whatever. And like I said, no, I didn't lose my job, but at the same time, it's like I might as well had, been, let go, because in this case, I felt I was kind of like forced to resign versus like me wanting to do that. So it's like you already have the system that you're fighting against. And then it's like Now, these things happening in your personal life, it's like it's bigger than, what we would like to, imagine. Um, so I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, at this point, it's just time to go, right? With all of this that's happening, everything in politics, like, I'm like, maybe this is really just time to go. And what I felt sealed the deal. Like, what I felt was literally a sign from God was my oldest son, my adult son. He just randomly came to me and was just like, Mom, are you serious about like us wanting to, you wanting to leave the country? Like, is that something that you really would do? And I'm just like, absolutely. Like, my son, he kind of was on the fence about it, but him coming to me and saying this, it was just like, wow, let's do this, right? Because that was my biggest concern, him not possibly coming with us, right? And that was like a really big concern because I'm like, I don't want to be way on the other side of the world, so far away from my son, even though he's an adult, but still, like, that's my baby, that's my first son, right? So I'm like, I don't want to have to do this without him. So when he came to me and he was ready to go, I'm just like, oh, this has to be God, right? So we began to just prepare. Like, we went and got our passports. We, like, I've done everything. I've, communicated with, immigration attorneys, things like that. Like, I've done it all. Um, so in that moment, I'm like, this all makes sense, right? Like, in the process of going through what I was going through, I was job searching, going on interviews, nothing was falling through. And this is a first in my life. I've never had a problem with getting a job. I've never had a problem with providing for my family on my own, in no way. So it's just like, again, I've had my struggles, I've had my ups and downs, but for the most part, I have been the one to literally make things happen when it comes to my family. So now I'm in this season where I'm just like, nothing is making sense. Like, nothing is coming together. You know, every move I make, it's being met with resistance or rejection. Like, nothing is making sense. And I'm just like, so I continue to pray about it. I continue to pray, and I felt like God continued to open doors. Like, this is what I want for you to do. Like, yes, it's time to go, right? Um, so what happened in that situation was we were absolutely prepared to and ready to relocate. We had chose where we were going to go. Um, and um, a situation we ended up running into was we have two mini doodles, two beautiful mini doodles, Prince and Caesar. And we ran into the issue of having to get them prepared because there's so much that you need in order for them to even be able to come along. Like, they needed certain vaccinations, they needed health certificates and things like that. And when I say, y'all, again, things were already tight financially. So I'm just like, looking at this, like, how are we going to pull this off? Because getting these things done, they're expensive. Like, literally for one dog, like, the health certificate is like $500 or more. So their vaccinations, like, very expensive. And again, there's two of them. There's not just one. So these were the challenges we were facing, right? And let me say this, even with facing these challenges, you guys, I continue to stand on the promise that God gave me. Like, I didn't try to hide anything from anyone. Like, I literally voiced everything that I felt like um, was happening in my life and that was of God. I shared it. You know what I mean? Because I'm just like, I'm trusting God to, you know, protect it and to, make this happen for us. Because again, I feel like this is coming from him in the first place. I've prayed about this and he has literally opened doors, and I feel like closed doors in a way that I don't necessarily understand. But I'm just like, okay, I'm trying to align with that. And with me doing that, unfortunately, that kind of like also opened, myself and my family up to, being kind of like judged even in our situation, and kind of like the embarrassment of things not working out, right? So even in that, we ended up kind of running into a brick wall when it came to like getting everything in order. Now, fast forward, we were able to get things in order. God continued to bless us in ways, like I said, that was absolutely mind blowing, regarding financially. Because what I can say, guys, is I don't care what it has looked like. I don't care what I did or did not have. When I say God has made a way, God has made a way. Um, in this season, I can honestly say He has had me depending on people in a way like never before. Never before. And oop, I don't say that with much joy at all, guys, because again, like I told y'all, like I have been used to just kind of being on my own and providing for myself since I was a teenager. So being in this space where now I am the borrower, and not, I'm the borrower, not the lender, it is a humbling experience. It truly, truly is. And when I say this season, it has been like no situation ever before, where I'm just like, okay, God, I do not want to have to depend on anybody anymore. Like this is a bit much, right? I'm talking about down to, I mean, you guys, people randomly like helping to cover, rent, and just cover, just living expenses. And it's just like, and one thing I do want to say, because I know a lot of people there, they love to, brag about the fact that, even in God blessing them, they like to say, and I didn't have to ask for it. No, you guys, in this season, I had to open my mouth and ask. Again, it was always me being, God leading me to where it needs to be, and who it needs to be from. But at the same time, it's like I had to ask. And then there were times where I did not have to ask at all. But honey, this was not a situation. Again, this has been an ongoing situation for over a year. So yeah, there was no you just completely, making it from one month to the next, without, having to go without a roof over your head or anything like that, and not having to open your mouth and actually share what's happening and what's going on. So again, that was absolutely against my will, this entire situation. But y'all, this fly do not want to leave me alone. They are one of the most aggressive creatures on this earth. But anyway, so yeah, it's like I'm at this point where I'm just like, okay, now God, like, because even now I would like to, also mention how sometimes situations like this can be unfortunate, because what I've also learned is that this this season has also taught me a lot about the people in my life as well. Like, show me who my friends were. Also showed me, the people that, God, did not intend to go to the next, phase in life with me. And it's unfortunate because it's almost like, you know, some of my relationships that have been impacted in a negative way have been relationships where I'm like, these are relationships I value, right? And then I've been left with a bit of confusion, because it's like, okay, it's unfortunate, that things have happened the way that they have. Maybe it's for the best, but then also kind of looking at it from the perspective of, had I never, been in this situation, right? Like maybe that would have never happened. But again, his will and not my own. So it's just like, I feel like in this season I was able to see, certain people for who they are, and honestly see, how having to depend on people will change them as well, and change how they treat you as well, which has definitely been unfortunate, because, when people don't know your situation, when people, just kind of have to assume that life is good and you're good, they treat you a certain way. where it's almost like they have the utmost respect for you. But the moment, some people learn about what's happening and learn what's going on in your life, sometimes they kind of use that against you. They can, even kick you while you're down. So again, I can say that this season, I am going to keep saying it has been one that I don't wish on anyone. Like, I don't wish on my worst enemy, because this is the longest I feel like I've had to live, um, where I'm not in control of like what's happening. Like, I mean, guys, I can't do anything. Like, literally, I came to the understanding of like, even if I wanted to do anything to change, my current situation, my current circumstances, there's nothing that I can do, because literally trying to do anything, it seemed like it only continued to make things worse, right? So it's like you literally have to wait on God. But being in that waiting room, I can honestly attest to it being one of the hardest things you would have to do, because it's like, okay, God, I'm waiting on you. And you are also doing your part, right? You're spending time in your word, you're talking to God. You're not allowing what's happening around you to, break your spirit, even though it's hard. But then it's almost like nothing is changing, right? You don't see the light at the end of the tunnel at all. So, like, how do you get through this? Like, that is literally where I found myself. Like, how am I going to get through this? Because I feel my faith wavering. I feel myself getting to the point where I am like really wondering, like, God, are you even in this? Right? Because I'm just like, here it is. I've been holding on now. I've been holding on for a while now. You get what I'm saying? Like, this is beyond 40 days and 40 nights. I've been holding on. And I'm just like, how much longer do I have to hold on? And it's really, really a really tough space to be in, guys. Like, especially when you, like I said, you come from just kind of like being someone who you're used to making things happen on your own. You're used to being, the provider, even the breadwinner, in certain, situations. So to be stripped down to absolutely nothing, where you have to actually depend on, the people that God has placed in your life, it is so hard. It is so hard. I promise you. But what I can say is, what do not kill you will make you stronger, because I have honestly found strength that I didn't think that I had. When I say like this situation, guys, like, yes, I feel like it had affected my mental state, my emotional state, like even my physical, well-being. Like, it had, because it's like you're constantly living in, fight or flight, right? Like, it and that's when you're trying to figure everything out on your own, when you're not communicating with God, when you're not basically, spending time in the word. Like, you're constantly living in fight or flight mode. And I can honestly say, like, I had noticed the change. I had noticed how these things, truly began to affect me, like, especially when I had got to a point where I couldn't pray anymore. Like, and like I said, that is the most recent, which is why I wanted to have this conversation, because I'm like, a year ago, even 6 months ago, even 3 months ago, no one could have told me that I would be in a space where I'm just like not sure what to believe, like, especially as far as I've come. Um, I was baptized in 2024. I literally have found a church home, became a part of the church. I volunteered. Like, I went the whole nine. And, even my life now, it's based off of my relationship with God. Like, everything that I do, everybody that I talk to, like, it's based off of my relationship with God. Like, there are certain things in life that I've given up. There are certain relationships in life that I've given up. So it's just like, how am I, in this place, God? Like, how have I been allowed to land here? Like, how, why has the enemy been allowed to take so much from me? Why has, life been able to, steal so much from me, right? And it is not uncommon to feel that way. It is not uncommon to want those answers. But what I will say, just as advice, it's not healthy to stay there, because you'll do more harm to yourself staying in that space, in that mental space, than you would just taking everything that you have. I mean, every ounce of energy in putting it into continuing to trust in God and continuing to build your relationship with God. Because y'all, I'm not coming to y'all now, and it's just like, okay, she's talking about it because it's over. No, guys, I am still literally in this season. I am still currently living in this season. There is still uncertainty attached to this season that I'm in. But what I'm trying to say is, I am choosing, even though I had that moment where it's like, okay, what happens when it becomes too hard to trust God? I had that moment, but I have literally been able to find my balance and find my way back to the truth, right? Where it's just like, I am choosing to trust in God's word. I am choosing to trust the promises that he's given me, because that's the only choice that I have, right? It's either you sit in pity, you feel bad for yourself, believe the lies that the enemy is trying to feed you, because he's going to feed you lies, especially when you're going through, because he wants you to believe it. Or you stand firm in what God has promised you. You stand firm in your faith. You stand firm in your trust in God. That is the only thing that's going to get you through. And again, y'all, listen, I welcome prayers, whatever. But the one thing that I can say is, I'm trusting God to make the best of what is happening. I'm trusting that there is purpose behind this season. There's purpose behind the suffering that I've experienced, the pain that I've experienced. I'm trusting that there is purpose behind it. And my reason for wanting to talk to you guys today is to just give anyone encouragement who may be experiencing the same thing. And again, if you're not experiencing it, that is a blessing. But if a season ever arises where you find yourself here, I promise you, do not allow your circumstances to cause you to stray away from God, because that is when the enemy will attack you the most. That's when you run the risk of the enemy getting the best of you, right? Like, you just have to stand firm. Like, being in the word and spending time with God, that is your foundation. That's where it starts, right? So again, y'all, I still trust in the Lord. I still trust in every promise that he's given me, and I believe that it will all happen. Um, but I wanted to talk to you guys today because, again, a place that I found myself in that is not easy to admit. I just know that there's no way that I'm the only one, especially in this economy, that we're currently living in. I know I'm not the only one. My plans have had to be placed on hold. But when I say God is still working, God is continuing to, again, do what he does. And yes, the enemy is still working as well, but I trust that God's will prevail. You know, literally, I just feel like I'm gonna be, victorious throughout this, like, because of God. Like, of course, I can't do it on my own, but I trust that he is definitely going to, again, use this season, this situation, the suffering, the pain, for my own good. And I believe that because I trust in the Lord and I love him. So I just wanted to, again, give you guys some encouragement, come on here to just kind of share my experience, because like I said, life is not easy. Life be life, and y'all. And sometimes we just all need a word of encouragement. We just all need to sometimes know that we're not alone. Um, so again, you guys, like always, I love you guys, but trust and believe that God loves you so much more. If you're able to, go ahead and like, subscribe, um, and if you don't do anything else, keep your eyes fixed on the Lord, right? Stay in prayer, stay rooted in the word. Like that is the way for you to fight back, um, in whatever battle you're in, spiritual warfare. Like I promise you, that is the only way to get through is to stay rooted in the word, right? And I hope you guys have a blessed day. And you guys, I'll see you guys on the other side of this thing. This is what Tree said.